It's no secret that there's a lot of correlations between winning sports teams and winning businesses. You see it all the time, you read it in books, you hear it in podcasts. It's almost become a little bit cliche. However, today in this podcast, which is the first episode of the Ownership Thinking series, we're diving a little bit deeper into why some of these sports teams consistently reach their goals, yet some of us trade business owners don't. And so we dive into a lot of things in relation to team building, having a coach, having the right mindset and having the right goals to strive towards, which we sort of take for granted in sport, yet we neglect to do very often in our own business. So I'm sure you're going to love this episode. It was super insightful. We've got an amazing guest on the show today who really does know his stuff in relation to these things. Again, it's the first episode, so you can look forward to a couple more to come, which tie into this episode. So be sure to check this one out first. If you've got any comments, feedback, I'd love to hear it. Head across to the Facebook group where you can be part of that conversation, and you can post some of your comments and experiences in the thread. Otherwise, let's jump right in. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradies Web Guys. Tradies Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradieswebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Jeremy Macliver, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. All the way from where?
All the way from Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
Sunny. Yeah, the Wild West still. There's a little bit of that out here.
Man, I love Phoenix. It's one of my favorite cities in the States.
It's one of mine too, so I'm glad to be here.
I've had some good times in that place. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. We're here today to talk about ownership thinking. And so you're coming to us from, you're coming to us. I was actually on your podcast not so long ago.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a bit of rundown as to you, your background, your podcast, the business you're flying the flag for today. Give the listeners.
Yeah. So I love the blue collar trade. That's why we had you on there. I believe that's really the backbone of everything else out there. So we really are supporting them, helping them to build a great organization. And so I come by that because I used to own some of those myself. I owned some body shops, and I also I ran a structural steel company where we won 100 Best Place to Work in Arizona, and we built great cultures in both of those. Ironically, where a lot of this passion comes from, and you and I connected in all of this, is I believe that tradespeople are some of the most brilliant people out there, and a lot of people look at them as they're just the plumber that's been over underneath the sink and all the other jokes that go with that,
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that they're the top. They're the ones that build all of everything else that we got here. So I'm a firm believer in them. And so.
Yeah, I mean, it's that whole, story about, people, that line being drawn in the sand between stupidity and academia, and people think if you're not academic, then you're instantly an idiot, which is certainly not been my experience with all the awesome people I've had on the show and all our amazing clients. Like, some of these people are the smartest people I've ever met.
That's what I'm saying, man. Even my story. So I don't normally share this on the podcast. So this will be a sneak preview, but I was a junior in high school. I graduated as a junior with straight A's, 4.14 GPA, and didn't go to college, decided to go into the trades. And I had teacher after teacher after teacher pull me aside and be like, Jeremy, what are you doing? You're going to mess up your life. But by the time I was 23, I was making way more, almost double what they were making, and living a good life and working with some really brilliant minds.
I think as well, like, and it's funny, isn't it? Like that journey that you took is often the journey that people go down after going through university and college and realizing they don't want to do that. They'd rather become an electrician or a landscaper or a plumber or whatever.
Whatever that is. Yeah, that's what they're born to do, and we need them. It pays well. They can do good. They can enjoy life.
And the reality is, if you've got a bit of nous and you're smart and you're willing to be taught, you can build a business, and you can, it's not
Absolutely.
that hard to, I mean, there's things obviously you need to do, which is, why we have podcasts and that kind of stuff and coaching programs. But, at the end of the day, if you're smart enough and you've got the right motivation, you can go and build a business and you can really turn that into whatever you want. I guess we're testaments to that, right? And you never even know where you end up. I've said it a million times on the podcast, where you begin's not where you end up. Like, I'm a plumber originally. Now I run a podcast. Who thought? If you'd have told me that 20 years ago, I would have first of all said, what the hell's a podcast? And second of all said, you're dreaming. And a digital agency. I mean, come on, it's crazy. And then
No, I totally hear you. I think we're all in that journey together, aren't we?
The reality is, though, if we never dipped our toe into that trade arena to begin with, we'd never be where we are right now. So I just encourage people to get started, because you never know where it'll end up.
Absolutely.
So we're talking today about ownership thinking. This is, I suppose, a bit of a passion of yours, coming from that EOS mindset. Do you want to give us a bit of insight into, guaranteed traction, that whole EOS model, which I'm guessing we're going to dive into a little bit? We're sort of breaking this series down, aren't we, into three specific areas. We'll get into that a little bit, but I'd like to hear a bit about, I suppose, what you currently do with guaranteed traction.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share a little bit about guaranteed traction and what we do. I don't want to just dive the whole podcast into EOS. We can always talk about that forever. But I really just want to talk about a couple of different things that are going to help us to become owners throughout our entire organization. But really, so guaranteed traction, I'll just give us our short bio. We're really engaged in helping blue collar companies get what they want from their business. So business owners start out on a journey to do something, and either it's for time freedom, they're looking for more money, make a difference. We really have that system that we help them implement. It's actually right here. Here's the EOS model.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's right there. I'm surprised. We eat, drink, sleep this. So, but it's really about helping the entrepreneur, the business owner. Like you said, business isn't that hard. It's just we need a set of tools and a framework to guide us through that. And these, I see this day in and day out, that we share these tools right here with them and start walking through how to implement that in their business. They start executing at that top level there, just like they are with whatever trade they're doing, whatever that is. They're the best of their craftsmen there. They just needed some tools in their toolbox to run the business, and that's what we do. We help them do that.
I think that's the ongoing search, and in my experience, it's never a destination. It's always a journey. You're always learning new things and adding it to your repertoire. But I think people, and I'm certainly in this boat as well. In the beginning, I just joined a business because I had this dream of, owning my own calendar and, not having a boss. And before you know it, you're just stuck in the middle of this job, which you don't want. And without the right tools and coaching and training, it never improves. And so that's through no fault of anyone's really, except for the fact you need to learn these things. You don't learn these things at technical college when you're, swinging hammers and laying pipes. You sort of got to take it upon yourself to learn these things in your own time and, outside of that, trade curriculum, inverted commas. So
yeah,
I think
too that every entrepreneur has to go through what you went through, and I've gone through it, and everyone, like, you have to go through a little bit of that. You can't read that in a textbook. It's a felt thing. I
agree, and I would almost say, and by design, even the customers that we work with, we typically don't work with a lot of startups because, like, I know I've been there, and I know that they need to struggle a bit in order to realize what they actually, the importance of the things that we can help them, deliver. Like, if you're talking to a startup business about, building a database and, email automation, this kind of stuff, they're like, what?
Man, I got it all figured out. I don't need you right now, right?
Exactly. I don't give a toss. So it's almost like, like that phrase, I'm paraphrasing it, but something along with parenting, never deny your children the majesty of struggle, like I feel it's the same with business owners. Like, when they start a business, it's like, okay, well, go and struggle for a couple of years and then come and talk to me, because that's when when you'll appreciate what we have to say a little bit more.
Absolutely. No, it's, and I almost don't know a business owner that hasn't gone and they start with these hopes that are super high and then they plummet all the way down to, I want to throw my hands up, and they get really close to that when you dig into it. I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't hardly know an entrepreneur that hasn't.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that they meet the right person.
I've been there twice this morning.
And it's only 8 a.m.
It's only 8 a.m.
I know the feeling. That's the truth of it, right? We like to make it one gradual, but it's really like this every single day. We're bouncing across the bottom, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of preaching to the choir here. Like, I feel like typically, people that watch or listen to this show are typically people that are willing to learn, they want to implement, and they're looking for, they're that type of business that is, wanting to improve and willing to take counsel, and for the better part, although not always, but for the better part, take action. I think that's the defining factor between businesses that are, are going to succeed or businesses that just sort of stay where they are. Like, you can take all the information in the world but at some point you're going to have to apply something, and that was a mistake I made for years. I'll be honest. Like, I read book after book after book and I was loving it, but I was never implementing anything. Wasn't so I had this, maybe I should actually do something in this book, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, and even the stuff that I would implement, what I found is hiring the person that knows what they're doing typically gets you 10x on on you trying to do it yourself. So that at one point, I got to the point where it's like, okay, who knows how to do this?
Yeah,
you do that. I'm going to just hire you, and I'm going to look really smart.
Yeah.
And I see team after team that they get the best in everything, and they think more who can do this, not how do I do this.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, I always resort back to, when you look at things like technology, right? And, when you've got a new business, and even myself, when I started up this business, 9 years ago, whatever it was, I started that business from the get-go with a fancy new piece of software called Xero Accounting. And it was relatively unheard of back then, but I'd been down the path in my plumbing business of doing the painful MYOB, carbon copy invoice, all that sort of bullshit. I'm like, I'm not doing this ever again. I want to be paperless from the get-go. And so I sort of went in with this fancy software called Xero. And it's funny because then I speak to businesses today, and we're not accountants. We don't set companies up with Xero, but I say to them, set yourself up with Xero, go speak to your accountant. And we set them up with tools like, Google Workplace and all these awesome, softwares. And they never know any different. And so when they speak to people that haven't got these softwares, or when they're not doing something, the way they do it, it's like, what do you mean you have a filing cabinet in your office? Well, we just keep everything everything's just saved on our phone, and they don't know any different. And it's funny to me.
What would you do with a filing cabinet?
I know. And it's funny to me because I think, God, if you guys only knew, I almost feel like I've sort of deprived them that majesty of struggle to a degree, because, they're all of a sudden they've just got everything at their fingertips whenever they want it, and all these amazing tools and resources, and they've never known any other way, And it's funny. It's the same thing, like you were saying, like with getting the right people in your corner. Like, until you find, those right, the right people that can help you with certain areas, it's like, oh man, how did I ever do this before without this?
Absolutely. And kudos to those clients that you work with that have hired you, and then they're getting they can't even imagine having a file folder. How much farther are they than the one that has the file folder?
Well, the thing is, they'll probably never know, because the person with the filing cabinet doesn't see a problem. Like, they're like, well, it isn't broke, why fix it, And so, and this is with my experience from going through an apprenticeship and working in companies, like, I was always subjected to the systems and the processes and the way that business operated, and it was archaic. But I didn't know any different, right? So then when I went and worked for another company, I was like, whoa, what? You can just take a payment on your phone? Like these guys, your competitors over here are writing out carbon copy invoices and mailing it out and then getting their debt collectors to chase them 3 months down the track when the client doesn't pay, probably because they forgot. I'm like, this is way easier, but they didn't know, right? So, and that's kind of the thing I always say to people, you don't know what you don't know. Like, this is a much better way of doing what you're currently doing. Sure, what you're doing right now doesn't seem broken, but as soon as you adopt this system, trust me, you'll realize how broken the other one is.
Absolutely. I totally get it.
And so anyway, we're talking, I suppose, you haven't even spoken to us about guaranteed traction.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, guaranteed traction is so focused on the client. I guess that's where I'm always talking about. But really what we do is we implement EOS. We help them through this system right here, guiding them through it, all the dynamics, making sure that they're getting their team aligned on where they're going, how they plan to get there, creating that accountability discipline to execute it. So just really get the day-to-day grind into their habits. And quite honestly, once we have it in their habits, it's their way of being, and they don't know any different anymore, to use those same words, we're done. Right. We celebrate that. They keep running on it. They keep growing. They have that structure to manage their business. This is all of the human side of it. So you're handling all the tech side of it and all of those kind of lines. This is how do we communicate as humans. I think some of what we're getting ready to talk about today, really about our dreams and how do we communicate those, get people bought in. It's all connected to that human element. How are we sharing that? And that's what we really focus on. And then we look for people like you to handle the other parts of it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. Like that whole, that whole mindset conversation, in my experience, and I've got like loads of clients who've come to us and said, "Oh, we wanted to, we're looking for a coach and this and that." And one of them specifically, I said, "You're not ready to be. You're not coachable yet. Like you're all over the place. Your head's all over the place. You're reactive. You'd be the worst client in the world for a coach." And so I sent him to a mindset leadership coach first. And I said, go and spend 6 months with this guy and then come back to me and we'll put you into a coaching program. Because I just knew, after a while, you realize that there's some people are ready, some people are not. And, we've got a coaching program and we see people go through it and we think, you guys, there's no way you're ready for this. Like you're going to be a punish to work with. And so I think you've hit the nail on the head with that whole getting people, that mindset side of it out of the way first. Like it's paramount.
Yeah. And I feel like the first part of really getting, once the leader has their mindset right, and that's not what we do. We really work on how do we communicate it to the rest of the company. So we don't, the coaching stuff that you're working on is not what we're doing there. Yeah. And it's funny because I just had somebody Monday that I had the same conversation. He's ready to move forward. And I said, buddy, I don't think this is right for you yet. Let's go to a mindset coach. Let's get that. And, it's almost like we couldn't even make these stories up. We're both having the same almost conversation. But and he looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, no, buddy, let's do this. And then once you got that, I said, in probably about a year, come back and talk to me. Yeah. We'll be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's kind of empowering too when you're in that position and you can actually say, well, and I've said this many times, we'll turn away a lot more people than we actually work with at our agency as well, because I just know that they're not the company. As I say before, they kind of need to have been at a certain stage of experience, been through those struggles in order to say, okay, I'm actually ready for what you guys are ready to do now. They appreciate it, and they're willing to invest in it.
Yeah, they got to be. They don't see the value until they've seen the valley.
Right, but I mean, the point being, I suppose, that's an empowering position when you can say to someone, "You're not ready to work with us yet. Go and work with these people first, and then come back." And I think that builds a lot of trust for people, because they're like, "Oh, this guy's not trying to ram a sale down my throat. He's actually he wants me to succeed, but he thinks I'm not ready to succeed at this part of the program yet." So
you're ready to succeed. It's just not with me. There's something different. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. It's great to be able to be focused on them, not focused on how I'm going to feed my family.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've busted this series down into a few different episodes. In the first one, we're going to be talking about why sports teams hit their goals out of the park, yet trade business owners typically struggle. And this is, I suppose, going to tie into that age-old metaphor of business and sport, which is super relevant. I'm actually reading an awesome book right now called Good to Great by Jim Collins. I don't know if you've read that, but there's a lot of, I've got a friend of mine's coaches a national rugby league team over here, and I had breakfast with him the other day, and I was sending this book. I said, mate, you got to read this book. There's so many relevant like metaphors in here and lessons that you can apply to your rugby league coaching. And of course, he replied saying, I've read it. It's one of my favorite books. But it's true, isn't it? Like there's a lot of correlation there between sports in general, successful sports, and business, whether that's leadership, whether that's, strategy, planning, execution, training, coaching. Like there's so many different verticals there that relate.
Well, the truth of the matter is all of this, business, sports, they all have, it's all pulling a group of people together to achieve a common goal, like to achieve something, whether it's, hit the football or throw the football down the field, or hit the ball out of the park, or do whatever that is. I didn't play sports. I played business, if you can't tell. But so if I ever talk about the football bat, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Oh yes, we got a hole in one, and we're playing baseball. So, yeah. But it's really about how do we get that human energy all focused in the same direction. And so that's why you see so many analogies between sports and business. It's because every position that's in a sports team is also in a business team. We just call it something different.
Right.
There's coaches on the sidelines making them win. There's the quarterbacks, and there's every single thing you see there is in the business.
So we'll keep going on this. In episode 2, we're going to be talking about you're not the business owner until you start thinking like one, which ties into what we were saying before about that whole mindset side of things. And then in the final episode, we're going to be talking about, why you shouldn't be talking about work at work. And so, but going back into, this first episode here, where we're talking about, the whole sport correlation, I think like a lot of that, in my experience anyway, is, kids grow up with this dream of becoming an athlete, or a soccer star, or a cricket player, or a baseball player, or ice hockey or whatever. And I think it's those, once they've got that dream in their mind or in their picture, then they, like a good coach will help them formulate a strategy to help them make those dreams become a reality, which I think is where the crux of successful business really drives home as well. You've really got to understand what that picture looks like, or what that dream looks like for you and your business before you can really formulate and reverse engineer a strategy to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting you say that about children dreaming about, being whatever, a star. You're seeing more and more of those stars being entrepreneurs. I mean, we have the Elon Musk and the Steve Jobs of the world now that have made celebrity status. You start seeing those. And I'm seeing more and more people the dream is to be that superstar.
Well, even like the sports guys that have, turning into these amazing entrepreneurs, like your Kobe Bryants and RIP, but, all these guys that have set up these amazing businesses, off the back of essentially being a sports guru,
Yeah. To be in a football through a hoop, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Get it right. When we get the process, we'll talk about that. But yeah, so, and it's interesting because as we jump into this some more, one of the biggest things that I find that holds that team back from really hitting that goal is a clear, defined win. Like we know the football team wants to go to the Super Bowl. We know the baseball team wants to go to the World Series. They have those defined wins. Yet in business, often we don't have that defined win. And so really the first step is just defining what does winning look like at the biggest level. And so we can jump into that as deep as we want to go.
I think we should, because for me, that was the thing that I struggled with the most in the early stages. Like I had the thing written on the whiteboard, but it was never it was always just like a rainbow and unicorn sort of thing, I never really, and I've since learned that the difference between, like a goal and a dream is a strategy, and it will always stay a dream unless you actually put some strategy in place to make you work towards it. And the most refreshing thing for all of you listeners and viewers out there that I've learned over the years is when you break that big dream 5-year goal down into bite-sized chunks, it's insanely achievable. It's like you were saying earlier, Jeremy, it's small habits that you do repeatedly which add up to this gigantic goal or series of goals. Like, it's insane. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when you break it down into, your 5-year goal into, annual goals, quarterly, and then monthly, weekly, daily tasks, you're like, hang on a sec. So I need to do these things every day in order to get this in 5 years. And 95% of the time, it works.
Yeah, no, I love this quote. Mediocrity is great achievements applied inconsistently.
Right. Yeah.
Because you see people that they do really good stuff, but they're inconsistent about it. So they get a mediocre results. It's more about that consistency.
Yeah. And I think people sort of have this mindset of, well, like, it's such a big step and it's such a big thing that for me to be able to get to this, when, without the right coaching and the right strategy in place, they don't realize that it's not at all. It's just a matter of understanding what it is you want, reverse engineering it into small actions. And I think that's what, where coaching programs and things like that, like, they really bring that into like a visual reality for people. And they say, no, forget, like, this is great. We've got this, but this is what we need to do to consistently work our way towards that. And that can be congruent across, all of your departments. If you want to hire more people, if you want to replace yourself out of different areas of your business, so on and so forth, it's just small steps. Bit by bit.
Doesn't really, I've seen about every goal out there, and like you said, it doesn't really matter if it's replace yourself, if it's grow your business, if it's make it, whatever that is, it's small steps.
And it's the same with sports, isn't it? Like, again, going back to, my buddy that coaches a rugby league team in this over here in Australia, and like, he's just basically rebuilt the whole team. Like, he's sacked half of them, he's bringing new guys in, and he's starting at the bottom. Like, he wants to rebuild bit by bit. You can't just bring a whole team in and then expect them to bang all of a sudden win a premiership. Like, you've got to bit by bit add to their skills, and not just physical skills either. Like, he doesn't bring people in to teach them how to play rugby. Like, they know how to play rugby. He brings them in to teach them how to play rugby with his team.
Absolutely. And it's exactly the same thing we're going to, when we look at it from you hire employees, if they don't know how to do their job, unless you have some form of training apprenticeship program, excluding those, if you hire a plumber and you got to teach them how to do plumbing, we have a really big problem.
Right.
I had my body shop, so I did not teach anybody righty tighty lefty loosey.
Right.
If I did, I'd be like, hey, there's the door, buddy, because we got some serious problems going on.
Right.
But it's, how do you function in our company,
right,
with our ways of doing it?
And this is something that is really common in, and admittedly, like, a pretty damn hard pill to swallow for a lot of business owners. And there would be loads of listeners, viewers out there right now that would be nodding their head to this, where they've had people that have worked with them who have all the experience, they've been doing it for 20, 30 years. They're excellent at their trade, but their attitude sucks and they can't be taught. And they're just basically starting to rot the rest of the apples in the bowl because their attitude's so bad. And I've had so many of our clients that have just had to let go their sometimes best performer or best, most experienced, staff member, purely based on the fact that they just won't follow their process and they won't buy into that, that structure, the direction the management want to take that team, or the owner wants to take that team, that company.
That's by far, honestly, I feel like that's the most important thing to get right when building a vision. Yeah, it's really cool to know where you want to be at 10 years from now. And that's really exciting. We can talk about that. The first thing that we actually work with that team to get really clear on when you're talking about the vision of the future is what kind of company, like, what's it feel like there? So, we've heard the term core values, and good to great that you just, held up there talks about core values, but really digging into that. What are the things that you value that are going to make this kind of a company that you want, so that when you have that rock star, super experienced person, if they're not making decisions exactly like you feel like they should, if they're not really bought into the company like you believe they should, if they're not taking care of the client like you should, they're ripping your dreams apart. So we got to get that. That's foundational to the entire vision, is what do we value so that we make sure all of our decisions by all of our employees are all consistent with that.
I think I can't remember exactly the coach, but I'm 90% sure it was like David Beckham got sacked from Man United, or I'm not a soccer fan by any measure, but something to do with the fact that he just became too big. Like he was bigger than the team, bigger than the club, and there was just this. It didn't gel with the culture of the team anymore, because it was like it was just too, so they let him go, which is
Yeah,
huge. But I definitely screwed that up. Someone's going to call me on it. I know it, and I hope they do. But anyway, it was something along those. It was something along those lines. But you do see it quite often in different sports, around the world. Like you see these high performers. The most valued player has just been traded somewhere because of the attitude or whatever.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm going to try to quote another athlete, so we're going to both get called out here. But Michael Jordan said what he said: "Stars win games, players win championships." So it was all about, if you have a team behind you,
right,
you can win the championship. And the Chicago Bulls kept winning and winning and winning during his thing. But we can't have that one superstar. We got to be playing for the same common goal.
There's a great series on Netflix about that. Have you seen that? Oh man, it is amazing. About the Chicago Bulls reign. It's so good. It's all about that whole team thing. It's actually super relevant to business. I loved it. It was great. But
it always is. I mean, you just look at it, they have all the different positions on the field or on the court or in the different seats of the company. Jim Collins referenced that book again, Right People, Right Seat. That's just the players that are on the team. They got them right. They all worked together and they all shot for the same goal. And no one had to be the winner. They had to win.
So, getting back to, I suppose, the topic of this podcast, which is why sports teams hit their goals out of the park, yet tradies and contractors struggle. The most apparent and obvious thing for me is, well, most sports teams have a coach. They've got someone that's steering them, right? Whereas most business owners don't. And they're sort of doing it themselves and expecting to get, these, rock star results. And I think
Tiger Woods has a coach, and he's, one of the best golfers out there.
Right.
And you think, how could a coach help him? But he's outside of him, looking at it, picking up on the little nuances that Tiger can't see.
Yeah, and I think that's that's obviously quite a big thing for, I think, again, mindset for business owners to appreciate. Your coach doesn't necessarily have to, have more money in the bank than you, or, have a bigger house or drive a bigger car, but there are little things there that, experience has taught them over the years or whatever it might be, or working with other clients that, you can certainly add to your business. I'm not a coach by any measure. I've never said I am, and probably don't ever want to be, but there's things that you learn along the way, which you can just say to someone and it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That little, that's what coaches can do for you. They can drop those little penny drop moments.
And they become the expert in one little piece of your success, whatever that is. And so, I'm a firm believer in multiple coaches. If you just look at a sports analogy, if you have a health coach, it's all about what you're eating and they understand how those mechanics work within your body. They're hyper focused on it, and they're going to see the irregularities and what it's causing for you. And you have a fitness that's watching the way that you're working, and then you have one that's around what's going on in the field and the plays. You look at all those they're not an expert in the game. They're an expert in one area that you need. And you're using them as a resource to enable you to get to the next spot.
Yeah. So I think importantly as well, what I've learned from a lot of books, and especially this book, they focus a lot on the fact that hiring, all of these these CEOs and stuff that they've interviewed that have succeeded, they basically said the power is not so much in, obviously it's in having the right people on your team, but it's also having the right people in the right positions on your team. And in a lot of instances, you'll have people that are working for you or with you, which are just not fitted for a specific role. You see it in sport as well, of course. You'll see people, all the time, actually. You see people, look at baseball. These guys that have come into baseball teams as infielders, Mookie Betts, he was a shortstop, and all of a sudden they've moved him out into, right field, and now he's one of the top 3 right fielders on the planet, like they just put him into a better position where they can perform better, so it's the same in business. So I think very often it's like we kind of have blinkers on. Again, it's a coaching thing, because going back to, we're sort of going down a rabbit warren here in terms of like recruitment and onboarding and that kind of stuff. But I think essentially, people need to understand that if you're bringing the right person into the business that has the right sort of mindset and the right attitude, you may need to move them around in order to put them in the position that suits them best, and you might need to test a few things in order to do that, which is going to cost you time and money. But like, you've got to kind of look at the long game,
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And that's, to Jim Collins' right people, right seats comment. If you have the right person for your company, that's a person that's bought into your value system. They believe in you. They believe in the vision. They're a great person to work for your company. They need to be in the right seat. They need to be doing the right job. And that's what you're describing there. We use 3 criteria to help them make sure that they're in the right seat. And that's really, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? And so really looking at it from that perspective, get really clear on what is it that they're supposed to be doing, and do they get it? Because some people have natural abilities to, sell, and others, it really doesn't matter how much sales training you send them to.
Yeah.
That's not their special. And we see it in the trades. There's people that are very gifted mechanically, like blow your mind that they can just figure out stuff. But they have to be able to get it. And then do they want it? Right? Do they really like doing that kind of work? Because it might be, the shortstop you talk about, what he really is good at, what he really understood how it moved in the game was right field.
Yeah.
Obviously. Right?
It's funny though, like from, when people look at that coaching management decision to say, you know what, you're very good at this. We know you're very good at this, but we think you'd be better out here. And like, Matt, you can imagine the backlash and the resistance that, that coach would have experienced, and making that decision where, hang on, what? They've put him in right field. Why would they put him in right field? But, as time plays out, sure enough.
Sure enough, it was the right move, but the coach could see something that the player couldn't, right?
Correct.
And really that all the players couldn't, because they were watching the ball.
Correct.
But the coach is watching the players.
Exactly. Yeah. So cool. Well, what else did you want to cover off on this episode? We've got a couple more to go. So
yeah, no, I think, really here, the other thing that last thing I would just really like to cover is, a lot of times I feel like the missing piece between that big goal, once we've said, hey, that's what we want, that's our big goal, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years out, whatever that is, and what we need to do next steps, is there's something in the middle that I really have found to be super impactful, and that's a 3-year picture. It's a little bit different than goal setting, in that what we're really doing here is we're trying to paint a picture of what does it look like there. Because 10 years out, it's kind of warm and fuzzy, and it's as Jim Collins says, it's BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, right? It's big, right? And it's almost too far for us to process. And then we have the current day-to-day, and to connect those, really painting a picture of what does it look like on December 31st of next 3 years from now. So whatever 3 years from now is, and really getting clear on what's the revenue, profit, and a couple numbers. Those are important, but what's really important is you start describing it in a way that your team can resonate with it. And so it's typically 5 to 15 bullet points of, hey, we've won some awards, we feel like this. And it doesn't have to be all SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. It can be a little bit more just painting a picture of it. I have seen that transform more teams that are kind of stuck, out there in the heat welding, and they're not really thinking about, we said we want to be the biggest guy in town or whatever. They're like, yeah, whatever. I'm building steel right now, or I'm underneath the sink fixing a dripping faucet, or I'm outside changing an AC unit. And they're not really connecting those two. But when you start getting them connected to their passion in a way that they can see it, that's when you really see them start to engage and turn. And so when we start talking about ownership in the next series, part of the series, the real link between our vision and our dreams is being able to see it and believe in it. Because once we get that, we can start creating accountability and bringing it down to the next level.
Love it. Well, I think that's a wrap for this episode. Good cliffhanger. We'll see you guys on the next episode where we're going to be talking about you're not the business owner until you start thinking like one. I'm Matt from the Site Shed. You're here with Jeremy Macliver from guaranteedtraction.com, and we look forward to chatting to you in the next episode. Peace out. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.